Hey, good morning, everybody. It is a Monday morning here in 2025. If you're watching anytime in the future, probably not watching in the past, at least I don't think, unless you started really far in the future and then have a way to get to the past. Does that make any sense? It's June 16th, and here we are on the Dev Talk Show with my co-host, Rich Ross. How are you doing this morning?
Doing well, Chris. It's a nice Monday out there, getting some things packed up, doing a little traveling this week. So yeah, it should be fun.
All right. Yeah. I think, summer is almost here. The school district I live in is out, but not quite everybody is yet. I know that sounds crazy, but there are actually still a few places that are in, but that will be changing very soon. And then, the summer always goes fast. So here we are already about at the midway point of 2025. So
yeah, we'll get all the kids. Yeah, before you know it, the kids will be going back to school again. I'm sure they want to hear
that. Yeah, I know. They just got out and they're already talking about going back in. Let's not do that to them.
No.
There are some things. We're not going to get to all this today, but
No.
I think there are some interesting, I don't want to call them features. I guess they are features. There were some things for developers that I think came out of Build.
Okay.
That they were revolving around GitHub.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what was interesting about it to me, well, so GitHub and then also AI, but what was interesting to me was that some of them, I think they were already in the GitHub product, except that maybe we just weren't using them or bothered to click a button and see that it was there. You've introduced some of them on the show before, like, for example, asking GitHub Copilot. That's the term I think we're looking for, right? Is to
Yes.
do a number of things for us. Like when GitHub Copilot came out, I think we all got used to it being that ghost text in the editor that would kind of say, hey, is this what you want to do next? And we've taken advantage of it on this show where we go, oh, that's what I was going to write anyway.
Right.
But now there are other features to actually ask GitHub Copilot to do something like review your pull request, make suggestions.
Yeah. And all of that depends on where you're asking it from, right? Whether it's in the IDE or you're in the browser working at GitHub Enterprise, there's different things that are available. So yeah, I think that's one of the things we want to do to kind of kick things off, because we can have it run in the background and see what it comes up with, maybe at the end of the show, is ask Copilot to do something that we're thinking of including inside of this. And I know when you did the APIs around, we get the right box here. When you were doing when we were creating the APIs and you were creating the service, there were things that you were looking at to, not return nulls, right? We don't want to return nulls. We don't want to return exceptions. We want to be able to keep things kind of flowing. So what I think we want to do is, so I'm looking at, let's see, maybe in here. And I've heard other people say, you don't want to do a show where it's just like, talking to Copilot. And that's not what we want to do. We want to kind of set something up, show a couple of things that are possible, and then be able to have Copilot go run with it. So to set the stage for that, let's think here. Let me get rid of this. So if we look at, make sure I'm in the right. So that's the data. It was in well, actually it might be right here, right? Where we've got, this capability where we're saying, hey, return null. Mm-hmm. If it's not found. And that's not what we want to do. We want to be able to return a empty meeting. Is that what we're thinking? I mean, because we want to, because this is getting the ID, but we don't find a meeting.
So I think there's two places. So this is the meeting repository, which is saying I'm going to look at it from the point of view of the caller into iMeeting repository. The caller doesn't know it's a Cosmos meeting repository. And iMeeting repository itself just tells you, I have a get meeting by ID method. It's asynchronous. You should await it.
Yep.
And you pass me an ID and I will give you the meeting object. What it doesn't know what you're going to do to get that. It doesn't know if it's coming out of memory. It doesn't know if it's coming out of Notepad, Carrier Pigeon. Doesn't
need to.
Yeah. But here's the other thing. And so I'm not going to turn this into a conversation where I challenge exceptions in C#. We'll do that another time, although that may be what partially comes out of this.
Okay.
One thing that interface doesn't tell you is that it might throw. Doesn't tell you that. And that is an issue with C# and many exception type languages. I don't want to just pin it on C#. It's even an issue in Java, although the Java folks, and I am not a Java expert, so I want to be careful to say that I'm not here. It's not anything other than that Java has checked exceptions where you declare that you may throw an exception, but that puts an onus on the caller now, that if the caller does not handle that, then that at compile time, you're not allowed to continue. So some people hate them with a passion, and other people say, but that's great. The compiler's helping you. And in C# we don't have it anyway. The F# folks are standing off to the side laughing a little bit, saying we've already got, or the functional programming folks, right? And there's a second piece to this though, which is I think what you've gotten to, which is that we don't have to be using the Cosmos DB repository. We could be using any meeting repository, and it might say, you asked me for meeting 3, and we don't have a way right now to, at least the iMeeting repository right now doesn't have a way to strongly tell you, hey, you're getting null because, but the point is that it might return null if the item wasn't found. And then what do we do back in the API? We just return it.
Right.
All we do is return it. And so the negative there is, I think if you're calling the API, your expectation is that you're going to get a 404.
Because it's not found.
Because it's not found. You're not going to get a 200, meaning request successful, but the resource is null. In the HTTP world, we say resources are null through 404. That's just generally how it works.
Right.
So
but there's nothing.
I
guess to your point, there's nothing in this call, and maybe it comes out when we do an open API spec over top of this to basically, and that's probably where you would see it. You would see it in that specification and say, hey, this result not only can give you a 200 that it found an ID, but it can also give you back a 400 or 404 saying that ID is not here.
Yeah. Yep. We could have gotten to this point many ways.
Right.
There's certainly the spec first way of doing things. Look, there's no doubt that we went with the tinker first development approach, where we said, hey, we've never used some of these things before together, so let's just start playing with it. And hey, do a lot of applications begin life that way? I think they do. So it isn't, I fully admit that we didn't build an open API spec and then use a tool to say, generate a minimal API from this. We didn't do that.
Right.
And we also did not say, okay, let's make sure from the jump that this particular method, the map get on line 60, that's based on an ID, let's make sure that it's aware that it needs to return different types of typed results. So on line 57 and line 69, we see results.ok and results.created. Those are called typed results. I think I want to make sure I have that name correctly, just because I do know that some people might be heading off to the documentation to say, what is he talking about? And yeah, typed results is a feature in .NET Core that allows us to define response types based on the method return type. That's a fancy way of saying, actually, let's see. I think I have it right. I hope create responses in minimal applications. You can just flat out return the type, which is what we're doing right now. We're just returning a meeting, and it goes ahead and turns that into JSON. or you can use the results static class, which is what we're doing. So we're not using type results. Let me be careful about that. We're using the results static class to say results.ok or results.created or results.notfound or whatever. But we could go, maybe we'll do this in the future. There's a strongly typed version of this, more strongly typed, called type results. So you know what? I don't want to get caught up in the documentation. I would say you can learn. What I am going to do, though, is while we're working here, Rich, I'm going to put this link both in our chat and in our YouTube, just so that we can start reading about it, right?
Yep. So is that what we want Copilot to do? If I get the sense of what you're saying is you want Copilot to get the results, and if it's null, return the results, or return results not found, or if it's found, return the results.ok.
Yeah, I guess my question is it a good enough prompt of a task to say we want to create an issue? Because I think this is what we're going to do, right? We want to create an issue to, like, it's almost as if, do we have to give it the background to say right now the getting a meetings by ID will return null with an HTTP 200 if the meeting itself is null. I would rather that returns an HTTP 404 not found, and just let it go. I think.
Yep, I think that's the right way to state it. So the meeting repository will return a null is not found. And then the API will return a 200 with a null for the meeting. If the meeting is found, not. Right, so create the issue in the repo for this project. So I'm also going to include in, so we've got program CS here because that's the file we're looking at. We're going to highlight this method here so that it knows the specific lines we're talking about. So kind of giving it some, grounding some of the context here, but I can also add additional context where I can say, in addition to that, here's the repository class. So you can see how that is going about doing what it needs to do. When this method here, repository get meeting by ID, async gets called.
Okay, and you were doing all that by clicking that little paperclip, add context?
Yep. Yeah,
okay,
so the context, and context is cool because it's not just the files that are in your repository, but I could say, here's a whole folder. So if we had a documentation folder, I could say, go include that, or here's how we install this, any of those kind of things. But there's a lot of
I was exploring the tools. I was exploring the tools one, and there was one in there called Codebase.
Yeah.
Where I thought, is that saying examine the whole thing? But I know that's not what we're doing here. So
yeah, I mean, you could, like, if we're at that point in the creation of this where you wanted to provide, here's my code base. How might, how can I implement logging across all the stuff that's in here? Something that's a little more higher level, or that goes across, potentially multiple classes of your application or files of your application. Okay. So I think this, from a prompt, will give us what we need. We've got a blank section here, so that's a good place to start. The other thing I want to point out is we do have these configuring tools, and then from here, this is looking at what are called model context protocol, or MCP. We've talked about that a little bit. It's come up a couple of times, but basically what that is exposing tools that agents can use to solve a problem. So in looking at this query that we gave Copilot, right? So this whole query that's here in this box, there is a certain part in here where we said, hey, can you create an issue? And create an issue almost becomes a trigger to saying, well, how would I create an issue? Well, do I have a tool to do that? Because natively it doesn't understand what that means, but I have a tool that says, hey, if you're creating an issue, this is where GitHub is here. And if you look here, well, that's add issue comment, but here, that's what it's looking for. So that text that I've created in the prompt, it's going to go through its list of tools and say, yep, I've got something that lets me do it. It's this here. And that's what it's going to wind up calling. So if it needs more information to create the issue, it may come back and ask me questions, because as part of this, and we can dig into this at some point, and as part of this MCP server capabilities, exposing a tool or exposing a capability from some service to be able to leverage, not only has a description of what it can do, like we're finding here with create an issue, but also here are the things I need in order to make an issue happen.
Yeah. It's interesting you brought up MCP, because something that, and while we let it work, I don't want to slow down what we're doing too much, but I didn't say in the opening, I wanted to say that, and then I realized that maybe that was taking on too much, is that the model context protocol is something that, as I'm beginning to watch more and more of the videos, I'm saying, okay, hold on a second. At first, it intrigued me, but I didn't know what to make of it. I think I've told you this, outside of the show. I didn't know what to make of it. And then I watched a couple again, and then I watched a couple again. And the one that actually started to sink in, and I'm going to have to go see if I can get this so that we can at least look at it and make sure we get it in the show notes, is it was something like your API is not an MCP.
Yes.
And it's a build session put on, it says, I believe, yes, it says David Gomes, lead engineer at Neon. And it's one of those 15-minute talks, if I recall correctly.
Yep. It's a great little talk.
Yeah. And that's when I think it kind of started to click for the first time. So I'll be interested to come back to that. But let's see what happened here is.
So it actually went ahead and did not what I asked it to do, but it actually said, I'm going to go ahead and make the changes for you.
Well, what did it do above? So before it says, if you'd like me to implement the fix directly, did it? I wonder if it said, okay, I created the issue, or because it might not have. I believe you.
Addition to bug return. Oh.
So I'm actually going to go look at the
test
issues, but do we have to tell it to go ahead and create it?
Oh, it's looking in the wrong place.
Yeah, look at that. Look at that. I wonder if you could tell it, hey, go ahead and create that issue, but the repo is here.
Yeah, let's see.
Okay, so let's while Rich is typing, let me talk about what happened there. So that whole chat was it was going down the tracks on the right hand side, and it does look like it said that it was going to try to create a new issue, but it seems to have gotten confused about where the repository was. Not 100% sure why, because I don't think we stopped to read it very carefully. Go ahead.
That is based off of the location in my where I've stored it. So it was actually using the file tdts repos / project name. So let's see what it says.
And sure enough, there it is. I don't know if you have GitHub at the ready, but I'm looking at it. So
Orbital, sorry, this here issues.
Yeah.
There we go.
So here's what's interesting to me, and I'll even say I can't help but smile and even like have that little bit of fear that creeps in every time I see what is now becoming possible. First of all, labeled it as a bug.
Sure.
Second of all, labeled it with the API label, which I wonder if it did that on its own. I don't know that we use the API label.
I'm with you. Yeah.
But clearly it's saying, look, this relates to your API. And then probably, I feel terrible saying this, probably writes a more complete issue than I would have.
Yeah.
And it responds with what you said. And even it gives you the why in the description, not following best practices, which recommends returning a 404 not found. Gives you the current behavior by even showing you the code, uses Markdown, tells you what it should do. And even tells you, I love how at the end, it's like, this is simple. Like, come on. That's the only thing it's not doing, right? Is going, come on. What do you know?
I could have done this for you already, right? As it was trying to do, but
and so cool, yeah.
Go ahead.
Go. Well, the chat answer did say that, but go ahead.
So ultimately, we are going to let Copilot do it, and we can assign. Oh, I don't want to assign myself. Sorry. We can. I'm going to turn myself off. But what we can do is bring in Copilot and actually assign this issue to Copilot. So let's go ahead and do that. And now Copilot has it. Go ahead.
This all seems simple, and I think we picked a simple issue on purpose. And the point is not to kind of like fawn over Copilot. I want to bring it back to MCPs, which I didn't know we were going to get to, but I feel like over in the Copilot chat, it made it clear to me that it tried to hit an API. And then I asked myself, and you may know the answer to this, and if you don't, I'm putting you on the spot. In the Copilot chat, it said, hey, I tried to use this API at this location, and it didn't work. So was that an MCP that GitHub's exposing that it was trying to use? Or maybe...
So the way, think of the way this works is your application has a number of APIs, whether it's line of business apps, whether it's whatever. You have some API landscape. Now, GitHub has their APIs that, you know, if you have a personal access token or whatever, you can go ahead and access those. All MCP does is put a layer over top of that to make it translatable to the LLMs and the agents that are trying to use those features. So in that video that you mentioned, it's important to say, just because you have an API for it doesn't mean that you have to include it in the MCP layer. You could say, I don't want it to do anything that does writing against my database. I only want it to be able to read and pull information, which is fine. That might be for the use case, might make sense. In this case here, it was felt to be a little more helpful and within the boundaries of security and all those things, safety and all those things, to be able to say, creating an issue isn't a problem. Go ahead and do that. So having the MCP server expose the ability to create an issue was something that met, you know, when they figured, decided what they wanted to include was, you know, below the bar of where they wanted to be. Now, even though they did that, we could go back into here, click the little icon here and say for GitHub MCP, here's that MCP server reference. We could say, nope, you can't do that. You can't create files. You can't create any of those things. And now I've got a second layer of control for how I want that implementation to behave.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So it's interesting because it's hard. It's still a little hard to really concretely wrap your head. Implementing one will probably help. But because I feel like an LLM, I would think, without even having model context protocol, could say, look, I took a look at the API spec and I think I could do this for you. And then it would just like try and do it anyway without even having the benefit of the model context protocol spec. But I'm guessing that what the model context protocol spec does for us, number one, it makes it easier for an LLM to act in the ways you want it to. And you just also reminded me of like the security aspect of it. Maybe not security is not the only reason. I don't even know if it's about permissions. It's just about like ability. What can you do?
Right.
So for example, where I'm thinking is that I kind of am dreaming in the future of maybe I could go to ChatGPT and say, I don't know if this is even possible, and say, we're going to have a meeting in August and invite Richard Campbell from .NET Rocks, and he's going to talk about where the I don't know, it's going to be a geek out talking about the current state of satellite launching or something. Richard's great with that stuff. Can you write an initial meeting with this setup and include a biography of Richard? Now, look, ChatGPT will spit all that out, but could it go one step further and we say, like, and oh, by the way, just go ahead and post it at Philly.net's meetup site, and then would it automatically understand the context of my permission to do so? I don't know, but I feel like maybe that's the point of this protocol.
Yes. So case in point. So one of the things that came out over the last week we had a meeting with so it was last week. WordPress, that platform, just like GitHub, has APIs over top of their platform that lets you interact with it. They basically said, look, we realize that, people may want to have agents or LLMs be able to talk to our platform to post blog posts. They implemented their own MCP server and made it available to anybody who wanted to turn it on and access it, right? Just like we did here with GitHub. So taking that next step, you could create an agent of your own that does what you're saying. Hey, our, whatever it is that Richard's going to be speaking at, it's hosted on WordPress. We're going to have the agent go through, get a bio, get a topic description, create all of those artifacts, and go ahead and post that as a blog post on our WordPress platform, communicating with the MCP server to make that happen. It would be a custom thing. A GitHub Copilot, if it was aware of that MCP, might do it, but I think there's a lot of other pieces that you had in there that you might want to set up a multiple agents to be able to go get his bio, go figure out what the title is for the talk and write the description, go make the blog post, assembling all of these pieces together, right? So having that happen is certainly possible. And I think if you look at Scott Hanselman did a talk with the folks from the AI Foundry, Yina, and I'm blanking on Yina's last name, but it was an awesome talk, and they did just that for what he's doing as part of his personal properties for Hanselman and his blog. So that would be one to take a look at, because they step through all of those pieces. I don't know that they got to the MCP side of it, but that's just the tooling at the end that basically talks to whatever service you're trying to write to.
Is that the Azure AI Foundry one?
Yeah.
Yina Arenas?
Yes.
Probably not.
Yes.
I hopefully got her name correctly, but okay.
Yeah. It's actually funny. So they did the video, and they also did he recorded it, so it became a Hansel Minutes.
Yeah.
So it was definitely a good talk to go check out. But it does the things you're talking about of saying, get all those pieces, assemble them for me, and go post them. So
now we tried to do this, and I think on a previous screen we saw some kind of error, but I don't know what it was.
I don't either. It basically is saying that it's saying it came back with an error, but I've got results. Oh, that's a zip file. No, we're not going to do that. Let's see. Go back over here and see if we can figure out what happened. Copilot link the pull request that will close the issue. Okay. I started to work on it. We'll keep the PR description up to date as I plan and make a progress. Yeah. So I'm not sure. So this is one of those things. I've not seen it do this, so I'd have to take a look and see what it is what it failed on.
Okay.
Let's see, because I don't think there's nothing really in the session to display here. Oh, and it was gonna have me download was the log. So all right, let's take a look. Blocked. Why are you blocked? It's fine.
All right. Yeah. Huh.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it needs a little bit of digging in. Like I said, because I've not seen it do that kind of a thing before. So, but we could certainly implement it here and close out the issue just by going through the process of what was suggested, right?
Yep. And so that is the answer, right? I mean,
yeah, I think we all agreed that was the thing, right?
Right. And
So
we were going to do it
this
really quickly ourselves, and then realize like this might be something digestible. Just to kind of explore this a little bit.
Now, here's an interesting thing. Even though it said it was not found, would you still return a null meeting, or you would let the calling program?
In my opinion, just now we're not talking about C# or GitHub or anything. We're just talking about APIs built on REST principles. The 404 itself is telling the caller the resource isn't found. You don't have to put anything in the response. What you might do is, and this could be something in the future if it's relevant, is you might use a spec like the problem details spec to include more information if that was important for the context of the call, which sometimes it is. In this case, just based on where our API is today, I think telling the caller, you asked for this ID, it's not there, is enough. Because all of the other problems that could arise, such as, well, you're not authorized to ask. Okay, well, that's going to be, you're not authenticated, 401. You're not authorized, 403. Like, that's going to come from other statuses. And then results okay is, yep, here you go. I could imagine scenarios where, so the 400 class of errors is meant to tell a caller, your request is wrong in some way.
Sure.
And it implies that if you could cure that, then it would work. So it's like kind of like saying like, it's not my fault. And if you could just figure out what you did wrong, then you could do what you asked for. That's the implication of the 400 class. Now, I say that with a really broad brush. So why do I say that? Well, 404 is like, if you just gave me an ID that existed, I would have handed you a meeting. 401, if you just would have authenticated, I would have tried to see if you could do this. 403, you did authenticate, but you can't do this. So it's still, if you can solve those problems, come back.
Yeah.
And so that's why I am saying that what if the reason it is not found is curable but non-obvious? Perhaps it is one of multiple reasons. And I'm not talking about anything to do with authentication or authorization. Then I could see saying, let's provide a problem details answer in the response that would say, okay, this will help the caller figure out why they're not found didn't work. Now, I don't have an example like that at the tip of my tongue.
I mean, are you saying we could do something like this where you could say,
oh, theoretically, you could do that. Theoretically, you could do that right now. But I would suggest against it. And here's my reason why is I don't know who a message like that is helping, because remember that APIs are called by machines generally.
Yeah.
And the machine's not going to do anything with a plain text response. At least, I mean, you could force your callers to deal with plain text responses, but that's a rough world to live in, because all it would take is for any developer to change like a punctuation and all of your callers are broken. So that's why we have well, it is one reason why we have things like the problem details spec, which is a stronger, I'm not going to say strong, a stronger and standardized method of saying, here's some JSON with I think 4 standardized fields plus whatever else we decided. And it allows you now to build a machine that says, I'm going to look at this, I'm going to look for this code, and I will know what to do with codes. Like, oh, this code says to do something. Okay, I'll go do the thing. I just don't know that it's helpful to do anything more here. It's not found. We already told you.
That's fair.
It's not there.
Yeah.
So
we can save that. So that's cool. And then we can check this back in at, end of show and include in the repository there.
Right. There's no doubt that where I want to go next, for some people that are watching right now, you may, and this is fine if you just say like, yep, it's great, this is perfect. There are going to be some folks watching who say, what does null mean? Why is null being used as the standard bearer for not found from the repository? And because null doesn't tell me why, unless you and I have this really explicit contract that says, I promise you null means this thing. And you can write a lot of software that way. And in fact, we as the human race have written a lot of software that way.
Right.
But another thing we could do in the future is look at returning a result type that wraps the meeting, but it wraps it with basically a success or failure to say, okay, I'm not just telling you that here's the meeting. I'm also telling you, yes, this succeeded and here's the meeting, or this failed and I might have some good messaging to why that maybe you can act on. But we'll consider that when we get there, because you have to ask yourself who benefits from that information. It's very possible that you could decide that you just have to decide like who's going to do the logging, who's going to do the alerting in your application. Maybe it's the API layer, but you might also make the decision that, no, I don't really want it to be the API layer, because I might have multiple clients that talk to this repository layer, and I want that to go straight to our alerting and reporting and say, hey, this is down. Someone should look into this. But you have to make those decisions. So
cool.
All right.
So we got 15
I'm interested
left.
as to why. Yeah, I was kind of interested as to why GitHub couldn't solve that. But I'm trying to think if there's anything we could maybe get it to. I'd like to see how. My understanding is it'll create the pull request, right?
Yeah, I mean, it actually did that on the other side.
I didn't look.
So we go back to, sorry, not that one.
Yeah.
Go back to here, right? It did create I think PR29.
Yes. Right. I see. And this is where we got to the error.
But I think the original description, it's got an initial plan. But it got assigned. It started the work, but I don't see anything. There's no file change because it failed out, right?
Yep.
So it didn't.
Okay.
There is one commit, initial plan for the issue. Okay. So I think that's just this, creating the there's nothing in here for it to, because nothing changed. Okay. That's interesting. Because I got to commit, but I don't see anything. I guess it's just the it's got to just be that issue getting a pull request created for it. That's the only thing I can see that's different. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So committing your work, we can commit your work and make it part of this pull request.
So we can unassign and then assign it back to me. I can, this is, let's see if we can do this. And so I can do some of the simple stuff, right? So we can go here and we can say, let's do, I usually don't do it this way. Branch. There we go. Create a branch. Branch name. This is fix. Bug 28, right? Because that's what they called it. And then we can do a commit message here. And I love this one. Go ahead and add the null checkpoint for retrieving blah, blah, blah. So that's fine. I think I have to stage this because it's the only thing that changed. And I can say commit. Right. So we basically just did everything we would do on the command line of git add that program CS file, git commit with the message that was sitting up here. So now we have a branch that's ready to go and be published and checked in. And let's see if we can do this. Can you push branch and sign and close issue number 28?
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, it doesn't. That's fine. Okay, nothing. Commit retry clean. Yes, I did already commit. So, we're already in the branch. So,
yeah, I think it's just checking.
Yeah.
Okay, so use the existing branch to do this, you said. And it says, that's funny that it just needs to check. And it's going to push it. Okay, right?
It's doing all of this because it's the human in the loop, right? To make sure anything that a human would typically do, that it gets taken care of.
I do see the branch up there.
Cool. And it's going to run an edit issue. And I can say, go ahead and always allow. That's going to add in a comment. Yep, that's fine. Let's continue. So now we can go over and look at.
So it closed it.
Okay.
It set you as the author for this.
Yes.
And it basically said, this branch is in the repository and ready for review. It didn't. I feel like the workflow might have normally been close the issue with the pull request, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, that probably should be the better way to do it. I was more trying to get, and this is, I mean, if we look at the code, right? I think that's how it works. If I look at that last commit, well, that's on main. This one will be on fix 28. I think this should have a reference to the maybe not. Maybe you're right. Maybe the issue should have a reference to the branch, which wasn't added. Right, because you have No, probably because it already has that in there.
So there's a way that you can you can use the branch in the pull request. I think normally I do things the other direction where I have a branch and then I open a pull request.
Right.
But
I think because the pull request already got created, it's kind of putting us down that path.
yep.
So if we go to the pull request and push, compare, and pull.
I feel like we could. What can you do besides create pull requests? Can you do something else? Create the draft. I feel like so up at the top of this web page, there's a Copilot chat button.
This one.
Yeah, can we ask it if it can use the branch, which the name is fix_bug28, to close pull request 29. And I'm not trying to be like totally pedantic about it, but and I know these are simple things that we're working on. So I hope what's coming across to either myself or even people watching is that maybe instead of just throwing up our hands, we can sort of insist on what we want done by working with Copilot to say, hey, here's how I'd really like this to happen. Because what we could do is I know for sure we could pull down the pull request branch because there is a branch under the covers that represents this pull request. And we could put the commit that you created on it. And that's exactly what it says here. You would need to update the pull request so its head branch is fix 28. And okay. All right. So that's interesting that they're telling you that you can't do it from here. See, that is they're saying you can't do it directly. So I'm at least appreciate that it knows you can. Right. GitHub requires you to open a new pull request if that's the branch you want to merge and close the old PR. On GitHub, I feel like you could do it. I feel like maybe I'm wrong. Currently, the PR, for some reason, I have this feeling that you could do it from the command line, but maybe I'm pushing too hard on it. So
it's part. It could be a little bit of you might be able to do it via the command line, but via the tools that's accessible.
Yeah,
it's saying I can't do that.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go ahead and have it do this, and we'll work on it. We'll call it partially a lesson learned, and that the whole reason why you and I are doing this is to figure out how do we use these tools to assist us in getting things done while maintaining, I think, the control that developers want as we're all getting comfortable with this. There is a level of comfort that I'm definitely still getting used to. This is such an easy one, though, that it's like, well, no big deal. But there are other tasks.
The ones
yeah.
I mean, the easy ones where you want to see it go through this, so that for the other tasks, I was
it's willing you to close 29 for you. Yeah, it's fine. Sure.
Yeah.
And then we can take a look at what's happened here, and we can get going. But
so it created the pull request 30, which is the new one, and then it went ahead and they closed 29, which makes sense. The new pull request has been ready and opened, so we can go here.
Yeah, I was waiting to see if 29 closed. It said it did it or no?
29 did. If I go back to the PRs. It said it closed it. I guess it looks like it did not.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Well, let's get 30 in there.
But I can close this because that's what we want to have happen anyway.
Yeah.
Then we can go to 30. It has our changes in it. Interesting. Yeah, there's something. There must be something with this repository that it can't see based on what I'm using it for. So, no conflicts with the thing. So, how do you squash and merge, right?
I mean, you can. It doesn't matter that much.
Which do you prefer? I don't have a preference.
You know, I as I've been using rebase and merge, I'm not all that thrilled with it either.
Okay.
It's okay. So it doesn't matter.
All right, let's just do that. Confirm rebase and merge. Cool. So we can delete the branch here as well. Nice. So now we can get back to our code base. We can go into Orbital with the API and the program CS. And see. Well, that's odd.
Let's see. So I don't see an update to main. I do see that bug 28. What did it end up doing? So this is listed as closed.
Right. So fix 28 is here.
Yes. So it created a pull request. Oh, it does say that it merged a commit into main. So it's showing a commit merged into main. And let me see in its program, orbital.api program CS.
No files.
Huh. Oh, actually, no, you're right. So what's weird is the ape. So, what did it do exactly?
I am not sure. I mean, whatever it did not do this part of it. It did not include any of our changes.
So when you look at the pull request, it says that it merged a commit into main. Okay.
Yes. Yep.
But then wait until you see what commit it shows.
Down here?
Yeah.
30. Okay.
So what does it say there? So scroll down.
Oh.
See how it says merged commit 2A15C07 into main?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. The problem is click on that commit, and it's a different one.
Oh.
It's the post show 250606 commit.
Yep.
Which now I wonder if you had locally or not. I don't know. I don't know if you had it locally. I mean, you do now.
I had it here.
Now, add null check for meeting retrieval is 102.168.
Yeah.
That's still sitting on your machine, though. And it's still sitting in origin. So
it never pushed.
Yes. Well, no, it's there. It's fixed bug 28, but for some reason, the Copilot used a different commit as the merge for the pull request.
Gotcha. All right. We are.
Yeah. I know we're definitely over time.
It's okay.
So it's interesting because it's still willing. GitHub is still willing to use compare and pull requests for us. All right. So, okay. we know Copilot, we didn't have any problems with it suggesting the code change. Definitely wanted to try and use the Copilot features to also update our repository, which we've had success with in the past. So not sure how we got on this track today, but that's what we're here to do, to learn. So
yeah. Ah, there you go. How'd you do that?
well, so I think I made a mistake switching scenes again.
Ah, okay.
Which in StreamYard, if you modify a scene, it modifies it. I can't
Now you're
lock
stuck.
it and say,
Yeah.
don't let me touch it. I kind of wish I could do that. So in any case, all right.
Okay.
So other things we have to do for the project is we have, it's very elementary right now, but we could continue building out the web interface to let you add meetings, edit them. Like there's a whole set of features there of adding, editing, making something live, making it not live. This whole idea of the state of the meeting, is it a draft? And then there's a whole set of features based on users coming to the site and saying they want to RSVP. But I think to get to users, there's a step in the middle of authentication and authorization, just so that we know who you are. And once all that's done, we might have something rudimentary that we can use, which I think by the end of the summer, the organization wants to use. So
right.
let's see if we can get to that quickly. All right.
This is awesome.
Well, thanks. Cool. Yeah, thanks for walking us through a lot of the features. I think we'll have to figure out why
look around what happened.
Yeah, why some things didn't work out for us, because certainly I am trying to understand, as a lot of you might be, is how do we use these tools to assist us without maybe freaking out too much, but
yeah,
because it is an interesting world, and I've been impressed by some of the things I've been able to do lately. So, all right,
cool.
We got to get out of here. Everybody have a great Monday, and I'm trying to make sure I can get here to where all the show stuff is. And so if that's it, then for Rich, I am Chris, and we will see you all next time on the Dev Talk Show.